And so this took place at a large 6A high school in the Austin area. We were fortunate enough to be able to jump into their existing summer strength and speed camp. And we specifically were looking at, our question was, how is there a difference between chocolate milk post-exercise versus Gatorade? And this was a study that was published 2019 from the International Society of Sports Nutrition. And so the way their program worked at this school is they went Monday through Thursday, so 4 straight days. They went through an hour of full body weightlifting, and then they moved immediately into an hour of on-field agility and sprint work. The camp was open to all athletes at the school. And so there were a mix of volleyball players, basketball players, football, cross country, and so baseball, softball were all represented there. And then they were split into groups of 9th through 12th girls, junior varsity boys, which would be 9th and 10th graders, or the equivalent of 14 to 16-year-olds, and then varsity boys, which are typically in the 17 to 18 year range. And so the study took 7 weeks, though I think the caveat's important that they did have a week off in the middle, and we did lose some training time at the beginning and end to testing for some different measurements. Some of the athletes came in with those measurements already completed, but we did lose a couple days on the beginning and end just because when you have to test 100 athletes, it takes some time. So we measured body weight, body fat percentage. Their 1 rep squat was an estimate, as was their 1 rep for bench. What we're really trying to do is get an assessment of upper body versus lower body strength. And then we randomly assigned the athletes from all 3 groups to either receive chocolate milk or Gatorade immediately after the session. And so because this is a field-based study, this is different than other lab research that's been done where you can control so many different variables. You can control what they eat, how much sleep they get, whether they have other training sessions and things of that nature. But in a field-based study, we're really looking at the real world. We're saying in the real world environment, does it matter? Not physiologically, does it make a difference? But in the real world with real kids, does it make a difference? And so the important part for that was we could not make the drinks perfectly match the way we would in a lab. And we didn't want to, because I wanted to grab what was on the shelf, pull it off the same way that an athlete would, maybe stopping on the way home from practice and saying, okay, what would they grab? And so we were able to get a fairly even comparison for carbohydrates, but the chocolate milk had less fluid, it had more fat, it has protein, and it has more calories overall. But when we're talking about electrolytes and when we're talking about the fluid or the carbohydrates, they're very comparable. And so our results is over the 5 to 7 weeks of training, we didn't really see a body weight or body fat percentage change for the group. There were individual athletes that had significant changes in their lean body mass, but as a whole, the group didn't change that much, which is not a surprise. Typically, it takes 6 weeks for that kind of hypertrophy to start happening or muscle mass to start gaining to change body weight and body fat percentage. So it's not a huge surprise. But the strength measurement was really interesting. So when we looked at composite, which is the upper body and lower body combined, what we saw is that the blue line is the sports drink, the brown line is the chocolate milk. And even though they started on the left side, even though they started differently, this is actually less than a 40-pound difference. And so that was not statistically significant. And so, you know, for the math, they started nearly in the same place, but they also ended near the same place. But we do see a trend where the chocolate milk group is advancing or getting stronger faster. So when we break that number down into our lower body, we see that, you know, this is a large proportion of the difference at the beginning is in lower body mass. And that can have, there's a lot of things that can go into that. That's one of the challenges with, you know, randomly assigning people, is that you can't really pair them up to split them out. And so, but we did see both groups got significantly stronger in the lower body, while our chocolate milk group got stronger faster. You do see that gap nearly erased by the end of the study. But this is where it really, really got interesting, is when we're looking at the upper body strength at the beginning of the study versus the end of the study. The chocolate milk group got stronger. On average, we're talking about a 6-pound increase, or about a pound a week, which is actually, considering where they're starting, is a nice number to see. But we see almost an identical decrease in upper body strength from the sports drink group. And there's a lot of things that can play into this, but the bench press is one of those lifts where you know that the person is really giving their all, because this is what we call an ego lift. You know, this is a number that when you walk around, you say, hey, what do you bench? So this is something that we know that they're really putting their all into. But they lost about a pound of strength per week during the study. And where this really starts to become problematic is when you say this was over the course of 7 weeks, over the summer. They don't have school. They're predominantly, you know, they're either working or they're at home. They have time. But this becomes really problematic when you think about that a football season starts in August and ends in December. So now we're not talking about 7 weeks, we're talking about 20 weeks. And to see this trend over a longer period of time becomes really, really challenging. And we'll talk about in other videos how that plays into recovery. But I think it's really important to see that in the real world, in our study with 100 high school athletes, that the chocolate milk group improved both upper and lower body strength, but the sports drinks group didn't have what they needed to get stronger. They didn't have what they needed to recover and adapt. And so thank you for coming to our Chalk Talk. We'll see you on the next one.